Welcome to the InProperty podcast. I'm your host, Simon Jens, and I'm the founder of Antler, the marketing agency for SME house builders. On this podcast, I speak to inspirational people in property. Hit the follow button and be the first to learn about new episodes as soon as they drop. So Brett, explain your role to me as though I'm a 5-year-old.
Okay, I'll give it a good go. So I'm director of Chapman Lilly Planning. We're a planning consultancy. And if you want to develop anything in England, you need planning permission. So if you want to build an extension to your house, it may be that you've either got what we call permitted development rights, so you can build it automatically, or if you haven't got those permitted development rights, you need to write to the council, submit a number of documents, and they will decide whether or not it's in the public benefit for you to have your extension. Very similar approach for national house builders and also for businesses as well. So if they want to develop a new factory unit or someone wants to do a leisure facility, then you need the benefit of planning permission.
Excellent. And there's a whole load of complexities.
There are
indeed. To say the least.
Yes.
So talk to me, I'm really interested to learn your story to where you are, and then we'll talk a lot about the business at the moment. So how did you end up becoming a planner? What was your route? What was your education? How did you get to where you are today?
So for me, it was very much a love of economics and geography. And that sort of was a natural progression into the planning profession. So having sort of enjoyed those particular subjects at A-level, then went off to university, selected a planning degree, mainly because I knew there was going to be a job at the end of it as well. So particularly attractive, and went through that process. I've had various different experiences with different companies and also for local government. But each of those have brought something a bit new, a bit fresh. And that sort of predated me setting up Chapman Lilly Planning, and been doing that for the last 12 years. So.
Perfect. Okay, and what does Chapman Lilly look like today?
So there's 13 of us in the business, all different levels. Really enjoy it. We solely do planning, so we don't do any of the other disciplines, but we do work with architects, we work with ecologists, we work with noise consultants, we work with surveyors. So it's really broad ranging, and the types of projects we get involved in are really broad as well. So one day I'll be doing a large residential scheme. Next day I'll be working with a business for a new business unit. We've also done things like country parks, surf lagoons.
What's the wildest project you've done, would you say?
Oh, the wildest project to date? That's a good question, actually, because it's that diversity. So one of the ones we're doing at the moment is a whiskey distillery, which is quite interesting.
Cool. Where's that?
So that's up in Wiltshire.
Okay.
And they do a fantastic product, but it's been really interesting to see their business grow. And that's one of the beauties of planning. You get to be a little bit nosy to see what everyone's doing. The surf lagoon, just on the edge of Ringwood, again, fantastic project. Yeah, cool. One absolutely thrilled to be involved in. We've also done some beach realignment down in Studland, and we've also done some big country parks as well for the likes of Bournemouth Borough Council, so as was. But
cool.
So some fascinating ones.
So the principles, obviously, they're all very different projects. You know, housing compared to a surf lagoon to a whiskey distillery. Are the principles still very much the same, regardless of project?
Yes. So for us, it always starts with a strategy. And we like to set that planning strategy out at the outset. It's probably where we add most value in many ways, because the actual process side of it is a little bit more mechanical. We have to make sure everything's in place, but actually mapping out from the start how we're going to get to that end goal. And sometimes it's not quite such a straightforward journey. We have to take it in steps. And we look towards that. We do our due diligence around things like planning history, what the local plan for an area will say. And once we've got that together, we'll come forward to the client and say, right, we suggest this is probably the best way of taking forward your project. But understanding their motivations is really important, because some people just want an exit, so they want to make a bit of money, a capital receipt off the back of it. For some, it's a legacy project, and for some, they'd be the end operator. So to sort of really understand what the client wants from that as well is, again, it appeals to my nosy side. I get to find out a little bit more about what it is they do, what they want from it as well.
And so obviously you've got that breadth of knowledge and experience, but Chapman Lilly as a business is very, very well known and respected, you know, in your patch and beyond. What do you think is the reason behind that success? Because I think there's a lot of small startup businesses that would love to have the reputation that you've got, you know, whether it's in your field or their own field. What's the secret to your success, would you say? How have you made it?
Yeah, well, we're still looking to make
Still making it.
Yeah, still making it. I think that's the best way of putting it. But it's a combination of factors. So one of the things that we wanted to do right at the outset was to be a little bit more innovative than the others.
Yeah.
And so we brought on things sort of pre-COVID, did a lot more online, community engagement, trying to reach some of those hard-to-reach groups, which all of a sudden switched from necessarily sort of being older generations to really the sort of working population. How do you actually get people to interact with planning? So that innovation
On the
was,
consultation side.
on the consultation side in particular. So that was a real sort of key bit that we focused on. Secondly, hard work in truth and proper due diligence. So there's no shortcuts, in my opinion. You've just got to do the work. Proper bit of understanding as well, so making sure that we're continually learning as well. So one of the things that we've seen in planning is it certainly hasn't stood still. So there's lots of new guidance coming out at national level, local level, and again, you just need to be able to harness all of those things to try and get to that end goal. And when they're shifting, you've just got to be quite on it, really. Yeah. So quite alive to those changes.
So, and in your experience, obviously the government have got this great agenda, 5 million. I mean, we're obviously never going to hit that. What do you think? Because I'm consistently having conversations with house builders. Obviously, the planning process is expensive, lengthy. What do you think the solution is? Like, how do you think that the need for housing can be overcome through planning?
I think it's making sure it's given enough attention and enough weight. So a lot of the changes that are coming forward at the moment, and there's not far off sort of one a week in terms of announcements, right. But they are generally positive. I think the challenge that we've had for some time is probably politics, in truth. So it's that commitment to growth. And it's very difficult at the local level for a lot of local ward councillors and councillors of smaller authorities. There doesn't tend to be too many votes in allowing significant levels of growth. Yeah. And the benefits equally haven't perhaps been conveyed as well as they should have been. And in some instances, I think those quick wins which should come off the back of the planning process, again, haven't actually occurred. So some people in local communities rightly feel a little bit shortchanged. That's particularly the case of infrastructure. But planning is only sort of one component in trying to deliver successful new communities. And you need a lot of the statutory agencies to play their part as well. So whether it's the water companies, whether it's the education authority, all of those things need to come together and be really well integrated. I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I think we've just got to keep battling as an industry, but also try and bring people along with us. And a good example, two weeks ago, I was at an exhibition. Someone came up to me. They weren't entirely happy about the proposed new development. It was going to change the character of their village. And about halfway through the conversation, and it was a constructive conversation, dialogue each way. But the lady just turned around to me and said, "Oh, of course, my daughter's desperate to try and find a home in the village." And the irony of it, you could literally visibly see the penny drop. And actually, oh, hang on a minute. Yes, you're trying to deliver this scheme. Oh, and you mentioned you were trying to deliver some affordable homes. So that all of a sudden, I have to say, it diffused the situation marvellously, that she had joined the dots together and could see the wider benefits for her and her family as well. Yeah, and that's often the forgotten story amongst all of this.
And it's madness, really. So in our kind of local community Facebook groups, any time there's anything to do with planning, there's always uproar and the campaign against development. And, and it comes down to the very fact of, well, you wouldn't be living in your home if someone had objected, against your property. And I just think that there's a lot of short-sightedness within planning, and that must be quite frustrating, from your point of view, because obviously your goal is to get support for the application, isn't it? How do you go about winning hearts and minds for people who are just NIMBYs through and through? What's the solution there?
Well, I think it's important to say that we don't try and brainwash anyone, but we do try and set out some of the planning benefits, and we are also on hand to answer a lot of planning questions as well. So there's a lot of misunderstanding as well out there. And as I say, we're very much there on any new scheme to try and make sure people have the facts, the right information, so they can make up their own mind. And dare I say it, there is an element of sort of messaging, trying to point out to people who these homes are for, why we're building these extra homes. Because, again, people don't tend to recognise the needs within their own communities. So there's a lot of hidden households, and just trying to explain that, whether it's through sort of reference to those that are on the housing needs register, whether it's just through conversations in terms of explaining to people and asking questions to people about future generations. And, I think the point you made about people sitting in their own homes and looking out over the fields. One of the powerful tools we often use is regression mapping. And when people say to us, well, the village has just grown out of control, and you take it back sort of 40 years and you show them how the village started, and quite often, somewhat cheekily, but we're asking, where
did you live on this
house?
map of fields?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then again, the penny begins to drop. But I think as a society, we do owe it to future generations, not just in terms of homes, but in terms of the economy, businesses, leisure facilities, and we're quite diverse as a company. And one of the things I enjoy is sort of bringing all of that together. So as an employer, our own experience, but also lots of employers I speak to really struggle to recruit and retain members of their teams, in part because of the difficulty in accessing housing at the right value in the right place. So there's a bigger picture which this all feeds into. Similarly, in terms of making sure sort of health and well-being is taken into account as well. So lots of our schemes will bring forward new open spaces, access to hitherto private land, for everyone to enjoy. And that both helps nature, but it also helps us as humans as well. So,
And what are the challenges that you face at the moment within your business? What are the things that, if you had a magic wand, you'd overcome overnight?
Well, I'm really lucky to have an absolutely fabulous team. I will start by saying that. But recruitment is very difficult in planning. And
Why is that?
There's not enough planners, in short, let alone those with real experience. And that's been the case for some time. So pre-COVID, the number of people entering planning schools dropped off. It's never really come back round.
Why do you think that is? Why is planning not a sexy business? Why aren't there enough?
Apparently not, but
But look at you.
yes, well there you go. You've just identified the problem, I suspect. But no, planning as a profession, I find absolutely fascinating. Most people you talk to, when you actually explain what it is that we do, and it's an interaction between sort of place and space, and how you can get the best out of things. So really making efficient use of the limited land that we do have in this country. I find it absolutely fascinating, and I'm surprised there aren't more people going through the geography route and coming through those planning schools. What we've tended to find is that specialist sort of planning degrees, there are a lower number, but there are a lot of people that are interested in the profession, but they need the right training opportunities. And I have to say, post-COVID, lots more people working from home. It is harder for people to develop that experience, but it's something as a company that we try and do. We're a bit old school in terms of trying to get people to the office. That's in part because it fosters collaboration. So
And gives the training that you talk
and
about.
gives the training for those younger members of the team. So I think all of us that sort of have become experienced in the profession, it was always those discussions, those chance discussions a lot of the time in the office that really provided those key learning opportunities. Yeah. So a combination of that and a little bit more formal training, that's really the way that we've managed to grow our own members of the team, and some of them are really flying, I'll have to say. So it's been really pleasing to see. But I think across local authorities, again, they've really struggled to recruit enough staff. So it's a challenge that is industry-wide and all across the country.
And is that the solution? So if local authorities can get more planners, then does that unlock, is that the problem, that there's just not enough people in the local authority to actually get an application through?
So people is one element, not just in the planning profession, but also the allied professions, so things like legal services. So if you need legal agreements as part of a planning application, or you need technical advice from ecologists, it's across the board in terms of those supporting professions. I do think there's a cultural aspect to it as well. So again, some authorities, and it often starts from the political level down, are more pro-development, pro-sustainable development, pro-economy than others. So I think there's a cultural aspect as well about how applications are approached. And dare I say, an element of not going looking for problems. It's not why should this be allowed necessarily. It's, well, is there an issue which needs to be addressed as part of the application? Otherwise, the default really should be let's approve it. And the timescales have been the main thing that have suffered, in my opinion, as a result of both bandwidth, but also that cultural element. Targets should be 18 to 13 weeks for a typical application. Quite often they're 2 years for the major applications. And
why is that? Why is it that the bigger ones have such long run-in? So could it not be the same, whether it's for 400 homes as it is for 4? Is there...
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because in terms of complexity and the issues that need to be considered, quite often it's the same issues on a small application as it is a larger application. But I think it's often sort of community bandwidth and those external stakeholders in terms of being able to interact and engage.
But is that not the issue? Because from a layman's point of view, I suppose I think, we all know we need houses. And I know that loads of people have tried to remove these barriers, but why is it still so difficult? Why, as I said, from a layman's point of view, it seems so obvious. What's the blocker? Is there a, I know you said there's no silver bullet, but is there a solution to overcoming these delays? And
I think some of it's resetting expectations, so making it less complex to submit a planning application. And to give you an example, and I will add, I'm very much in favour of ecology and biodiversity, and a lot of the changes that have come in are helping to take us forward as a society. But if you approach me about submitting a planning application today for a new house on a greenfield site, or even sort of knocking down an existing building on a brownfield site to erect a new home, one of the first things I'd be saying to you is, right, we need to get the ecology work underway, often BAT surveys. And those BAT surveys, in the Dorset area at least, would need to be undertaken across 3 seasons if there is low potential for bats. So straight away, you can be talking about 12 to 18 months, depending on when you first start a project, just to get the BAT surveys. Now, I know in the majority of cases that there will be a couple of £100 worth of bat mitigation needed at the end of it. There are the odd occasion where you've got a particularly rare species, you need to do a bit more, but a couple of £100 to put up the mitigation, which will include bat bricks, bat boxes. But the reality is, for all the survey work, you can easily clock up £10,000 doing all the survey work. That's one example, which I just think is a bit mad.
So like bats, for example, how long have those regulations been in place?
So they've really been in place for about the last 4 or 5 years. Right. It is an issue which I've taken up with the likes of Natural England, and I know there are some, even within Natural England's own ranks, that are slightly miffed because they see ecologists getting richer, and the end result in terms of the benefit to nature is still exactly the same as it was before. So there's got to be better solutions.
Yeah, and this is the issue, I think, that every time I speak with one of our house builder clients, there's a new hurdle. As you said, there's a new regulation every week, did you say?
Pretty much.
There's a new hurdle, a new levy or something. And do you think it's intentional? Are they trying to make it harder, just trying to rinse as much value out of it? Because there are house builders now that, SMEs that are shutting up shop because the cost of operating and getting through planning is so steep that it just doesn't stack up anymore. Can you see things improving? Is the government 5 million dream a pipe dream? Is it possible? What do you think?
I think things have got to improve, and that's got to happen through a variety of different means. One, from a regulatory point of view, just trying to make it a little bit more simpler, a bit more focused. In fairness to the current government, it's come an awful long way. It's put a number of things in place. Part of the difficulty, though, is, again, that involves more change. So every time there's this little bit of incremental tinkering, you have to reset a little bit, the parameters change a little bit. But on the whole, they are positive moves. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near enough to get us to the 5 million homes a year. That said, if we set a target for 2 million homes, we probably come in at 1 million. By setting 5, I think it does set a clear ambition for growth, and that's a message which really does need to be reinforced out there. So I think the government deserve a little bit of credit for what they've sought to try and do, and a lot of the challenges have come in from past administrations. It's not a political comment, but there is an awful lot already in train, and that's taken time to come through the system. And again, they've tried to make some fairly quick moves just to try and free it up. The other part of the equation is very much around macroeconomics, and that is more difficult. So things like COVID, cost of living increases, I'm sure the war in Iran now, all of these things have a knock-on impact for materials and also the availability of credit as well for people to buy their first home. So a lot of the economic side of it is now having a real impact upon our clients, particularly the smaller SMEs. So what we've seen over a 20-year period is planning assume more and more responsibility. So going back sort of 20, 25 years plus, we never used to be responsible for delivering affordable homes. There was a council house building programme that local authorities would take forward. That's something that got put onto planning. We've then seen more and more responsible for local infrastructure, so through the Community Infrastructure Levy. That's again placed additional costs onto house builders, and so the list goes on. Similarly around ecology, maybe long overdue, some will say, but picking up the cost of that as well, quite significant, particularly along the south coast here, where you've got nutrient neutrality, and the cost of mitigating that can be quite high. So all of those costs have come onto the developers' shoulders, as well as a massive increase in terms of build costs and labour costs, really making it very, very difficult to viably deliver new homes. So that's a challenge which sits almost outside the planning process, but has a massive knock-on impact for us.
Yeah, I mean, the comments that I hear at the moment, the market's not flying, to kind of put it nicely. I think the frustration on the part of house builders now is, government's got this amazing target, but actually if there's no support to sell the houses that they've built, which I think is the concern at the moment, that actually there's a lot of stock kicking around, but it is what it is. So looking back on your kind of career, what decisions have you made along the way that have had the biggest impact, or is there a key decision you think if I hadn't made that choice, I wouldn't be where I am today?
I think for me, it's probably setting up Chapman Lilly Planning, but that wouldn't have happened without some really key mentors throughout my career. So I started in private practice and still owe a debt of gratitude to my original directors there. Along through my career, I've had a chance to work alongside some amazing entrepreneurs as well. And I've learned so much from them. People that have taken technological risks, that have been really creative in their approach. And they've inspired me, frankly, and we try and bring a little bit of that creativity into Chapman Lilly. But I think it was that moment where I thought, I'm beginning to get away from the thing I love, and that is delivering new development on the ground, be it in the form of homes, say businesses, or new nature parks and development that's quite broad ranging. That was the bit that said, no, I want to get back to that, and was really the catalyst for setting up Chapman Lilly.
And what was do you remember the moment where you thought, I'm going to set this up, or was it an organic thing? Was it just a one day I'm doing that? How did the decision come about?
So I found myself in a company where I was overseeing property, planning, and to a degree permitting as well as part of a small team. But the bit I really enjoyed was planning, and it was pretty quick, really. It was a case of, right, I want to get back to what I really enjoy doing. And I was very fortunate because I had been offered a job by one of my clients to this day at WH White. So very grateful for them. But I said to them, look, if I set up Chapman Lilly Planning, would you come on the journey with me? And 12 years later, still very much working with that client, doing some really exciting projects. So I was fortunate that they were willing to support me on that journey a little bit as well. So.
Yeah, cool. And if you hadn't have ended up in property, where do you think you'd have ended up otherwise?
So it's a really good question, and I was scratching my head thinking about this the other day. Is what else could I have done if I wasn't a planner?
Yeah.
I think for me it would have probably been something around coastal management, and I've always had a bit of a passion. There's a bit of crossover with planning, but I really like the interaction around the coast. Plus, it gets me out onto the water, which who wouldn't enjoy that?
Out on your boat?
Out on the boat, or out on a surfboard or a paddleboard. But I just look at that whole environment, and it's really sort of taken off. So whether it's aggregate extraction, whether it's renewable energy projects, whether it's ports, whether it's leisure, whether it's fishing, and then you've got all the natural processes that go on with that. I still remember my geography days of longshore drift and all the amazing things that are sort of really inspired, and tides. And I think it would have been something in coastal management.
Yeah, cool. And on your journey, what's the single biggest challenge that you've faced?
Good question. I think for me, it's probably been around managing that work-life balance. That's a tough one.
So talk to me about that. How do you cope with it? What's your strategy?
To a certain extent, it's the people around me and family that need to take a lot of the credit. So I have to say I've thrown my heart and all my passion into what we do as a business. I think some of the benefits we get from it as well, which we managed to put back into the community, so things like the sponsorship of Swanage and Wareham Rugby Club. We've just had our Friends and Family Day, absolutely fantastic. So sharing some of those benefits has been a bit of a sort of outlet and release for me.
Nice.
But overall, I'd say, I probably haven't got the balance right. So I might not be the one to learn from in that particular. So
when you say you haven't got the balance right, as in you think you work too hard and you don't spend enough time with your family?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So I'd be lying if I said it any other way. But
it's tough. It's so tough, isn't it? And I think this idea of, they talk about lifestyle businesses, and I think if your business can sort of intertwine with your lifestyle, if you love what you do, as long as it's, I think with having that work-life balance, I think as long as it's not negatively impacting on your family, we can all work too hard at times, but it's making sure that your family get the best of you as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And they certainly see my passion around it. I drive the kids mad when we go around all along the South Coast and I'm there pointing out schemes we've been involved in. Yeah. And they're beginning to come along on the journey, actually.
That's cool. Are they excited now when you say I do that one?
Excited might be a bit of an exaggeration. I'm super excited. But it does begin to show up in their own sort of geography studies. So, particularly my daughter, she's doing really well in geography, and I put some of that down to my education. So.
Yeah, cool, excellent. And what? So your success in property, you've said it has an impact on your work-life balance, but has it cost you anything being successful in your career?
I've been really fortunate, I think, in terms of the journey we've been on. So year on year, we've grown. And that's the fulfilling thing for me, is not so much the financial growth of the business, but the types of projects that we've got involved in. So in terms of that cost, I would say far outweighed by the benefits, and the types of projects and clients that we're working with now. Absolutely fantastic. I love the diversities. I know I keep mentioning it, but that's one of the things that perhaps sets us apart. Yeah. We still do from one house up to around 1,200 new homes as we're working on in one place. I still love working with businesses and understanding what their needs are. So just in the last week, we've delivered a new showroom for a company that's based up in Tess Valley. That was a fantastic project to work on. I love some of the bits we do with the estates, and some of the really sort of good quality house builders as well. So we're working with the likes of Bellway, we're working for the likes of CG Fry and White Homes as well, AJC. So a fantastic mix of local developers, and we're all in it together, and we're all trying to develop something which has a bit of a legacy to it, so that we can all go back with that bit of pride and say, we're involved in that. So I haven't really answered your question in terms of costs, but cool. For me, it's actually been really rewarding.
Yeah. So. No, that's good. That's good. So the worst case scenario, you lost it all today. What would you wake up and do tomorrow? What would be the first thing that you did?
I'd probably dust off the surfboard in the garage, and it will take some dusting. So, we talk about sort of what my release used to be in terms of getting that balance, and that used to be where I get my headspace. But the boards have been hung up for a little while. Yeah. But I'd definitely get one of those out, head down to Kimmeridge and get some waves and,
get some clarity down there. Yeah, nice. Amazing. So planning, pretty complex. What happens if someone chooses to build without planning permission?
Again, really good question. One of the teams that we have seen local authorities maintain in most areas is their enforcement team. And if people are alerted to development that's happened without the benefit of planning permission, the enforcement team will generally go out and investigate and decide whether it's in the public interest to take that further. I think really the value in development and the value in planning wouldn't be there if people could just build what they want where they want to. So for me, I get slightly disheartened when I do hear stories of people doing things without the benefit of planning permission. Sometimes it's entirely naively, and we try and help them through the journey of rectifying it. Sometimes, dare I say it, there's probably a little bit more thought that's gone into that, and that's not an area where I have a huge amount of sympathy for, because, as I say, we all have to abide by the rules to some extent. And I often say to people when they say, well, look, it really hasn't caused any harm at all. And I said, well, if everyone did the same, imagine how different our landscapes, our townscapes would look. A good example is often when we talk about things like campsites, and they say, oh, the permits are amazing. I've only just started this small campsite. Where's the harm? Well, if everyone did it on every field, all of a sudden, the whole area would look very, very different. So I think there's a very valid reason why we need to apply for planning permission, and it is all about the wider public benefit, and that's something which we should never lose sight of.
But they're talking about loosening, increasing the scope of permitted development, aren't they? So that if you want to crack on and build, is it going up now? You can go up a floor or go into the loft, and is that all now part of PD?
So there is an element of that. There's actually a huge number of controls. So the headline is you can just go and build an additional story, but actually there's quite a lot of conditions that need to be satisfied for that actually to move forward, and that is entirely within the planning system. So that's not an abuse of the planning system. That is about harnessing some of the tools which someone has given thought to, and the government trying to stimulate a little bit of additional growth, which I think is a very healthy thing. But I think the headlines do often get masked by some of the more detailed bits. And that's where, dare I say it, the likes of ourselves come in terms of helping people navigate through that process.
Look, Brett, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming in, opening up, and wish you all the best at Chapman Lily.
Wonderful. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in for the InProperty podcast. See you next time.